mainly wanted to provide a couple of injury updates, and then I'll take questions. First of all, with Chris Davis, who's been on the 60-day disabled list since spring training. He has, as of this morning, successfully undergone surgery to repair hip labrum, arthroscopic surgery for his left hip. This was done in Dallas, Texas, by Dr. Mark Muller at the Baylor Scott and White Sports Surgery Center in the Dallas area. This is a procedure that typically carries a return to play in a baseball context of anywhere from 4 to 5 months. So he projects to be out for the season, but it is a timeline that would allow him to return and participate in a full spring training next year. We anticipate that he'll be fully recovered at that time. This is something that we have come to in conjunction, or had come to in conjunction with him, and working through some of the discomfort and pain he was experiencing during spring training in his lower back and hip region. And ultimately, this was decided upon the course of action that will hopefully be curative, but there will be a somewhat lengthy recovery there for Chris. He's home, he's doing well, everything went very smoothly, and he's on the road to recovery right now. Additionally, I know a lot of us saw the injury that Richie Martin suffered in center field last night in Norfolk. We do have results back from that. Unfortunately, he has a fracture in the radius bone in his left wrist. Fortunately, it is a non-displaced fracture, meaning we're not anticipating any type of surgical intervention, and it'll be a pretty straightforward healing process. But obviously, there'll be several weeks involved in that. He'll be in a splint for about 6 weeks, and I think that we would hope to get him back on a baseball field in that 8 to 12 week range. So another really tough turn of events for a guy that we like a lot, plays really hard, and has just unfortunately had some injuries, unlucky injuries the last few years. But we're going to do everything we can to get him back before the end of the season and get him back into baseball action if it's at all possible. So those are the big news items today. I'm happy to address those issues or any other questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Mike. Just a reminder to media to please enter your name in the chat if you have a question. With that, we'll go to Rock Kabako.
Mike, I know you're not a doctor here, but with Davis, you reported to spring training and seemed like he was feeling good about everything, and then 2 at-bats and this happens. I mean, is there an explanation of how something like this could happen the way it did to be that serious? And did you know that it was going to be this serious?
I think I'll let him address that at the right time. I think it's safe to say that veteran baseball players, or any baseball players, they deal with things, and they play through things over a course of seasons and years. And ultimately you get to a point where you come to the conclusion that something needs to be done about it. So yeah, we weren't able to see him in much spring training action. He's been dealing with this since then. And it was the conclusion of the medical people involved and Chris that he wanted to get this fixed once we had the proper diagnosis.
Rich Dubroff, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, with the Martin injury, and you've had a lot of churn at second base in the last several days. A lot of moves. Are you planning to try and acquire additional infielders from outside the organization?
I don't know. There's a lot of things we'll have to see. We don't have any imminent plans to do so. We're always looking, and players become available, get DFA, get released, they have outs, maybe they'll hit the trade market. We'll listen to all of that. I do view Richie's injury as a blow to our depth in the middle infield and in the utility category for this 21 season. We were counting on him to provide that and possibly come up and do more for us. So this really stinks, for us and for him especially. I feel really badly for him that another ill-timed injury has occurred. He hasn't really gotten a extensive stretch to play since 2019. We do have a lot of interesting infielders that are starting to matriculate into the upper minors. And, we're keeping an eye on all of those guys. Others of them are a little banged up right now too. And so we're going with the group that we have. But we will certainly see how things evolve on all fronts, external and internal, over the next few weeks. And in the meantime, we hope that the group that we have up here in Baltimore continues to stay healthy and contribute.
Nathan Ruiz.
Hey, Mike, do you have any update on how Heston Kjerstad is progressing and what the timeline looks like for him to join an affiliate?
Yeah, there hasn't been much to report. As I said in the time, and I feel it's appropriate to emphasize again. I mean, this is a very tricky condition that he's coming out of. It involves the heart muscle. It's very serious in that regard, and it's something that we're going to have to take very slowly and methodically and carefully. And it's probably going to take some time, but we've got all hands on deck to make sure that this goes well. He's got every medical resource available to him, world class, and he's got a great head on his shoulders, and he's a very determined, disciplined kid. So it all projects well, but we're not going to rush anything. And this is certainly not something that I've had a lot of experience with, and it's not something that happens a lot in baseball. So there's not a real precise timeline we can put on something like this.
Joe Trezza, go ahead.
Mike, do you have an update on Hunter Harvey, and do you think he'll be activated when eligible? And also, just kind of zooming out, all these injury questions seems like they're kind of piling up. Do you think the injuries are a result of the pandemic and the time off, or is it something else?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly these the ones that we've just discussed, it's hard to attribute to a layoff. I mean, Richie broke a bone on a collision. I guess it's possible with others, and we're seeing a lot around the league. Certainly, that's something everyone's got in the front of their mind. I just don't know that these are the result of the uneven schedule the last couple of years. But it's something that we're worried about in general. And Hunter Harvey's doing well. He's throwing. He's throwing in simulated games. His velocity's there. The innings that he's thrown down there in Sarasota have gone well so far. He's only thrown a couple so far, and we've got to have several outings before he's deemed fully ready and built up, and all those boxes have been checked from a rehab status. But at this point, I still think that we're projecting him to be eligible to come off of the 60-day DL, if not exactly 60 days after his placement, then a few days thereafter, assuming things continue to go smoothly.
Do you think he'll do a rehab assignment before that?
I haven't talked specifically with our trainers about what the exact plan is, where he'll do it. He's doing it in the extended spring, which is essentially like the GCL environment right now. And I think that it's very possible that we'll send him to some other affiliates as he climbs his way up the ladder. Another complicating factor in this is we're currently seeing with Anthony Santander is there are re-entry protocols that have to be factored in and tied into something like this. And with a pitcher in particular, might be a little extra tricky with those down days. So we'll map all that out. But he's probably gonna pitch at another level between the extended spring training and the major leagues.
Next question is from John Mioli.
Mike, in a year when depth and flexibility are important just to manage day-to-day in the big league level, you have a lot of players who are on the 40 but aren't on the big league roster at the moment who aren't healthy. What does that do to planning and you guys being able to keep everyone healthy and competitive at the big league level?
I think we're okay right now, but it's very tough. You get too many injured players on your 40-man roster, it can really create some problems. And, like I said, I think we're okay as we stand right now. We're certainly not in a position to complain. This happens to every team. It's part of a season, part of the game. There's probably a lot of other teams that are a lot worse in that regard right now, but we got to keep our eye on it, and we have to be thinking about our roster always and making sure that we have players that are eligible for recall or injury replacement on the 40, or able to get them on the 40 easily at any given time, because something can happen in the middle of the night on a nightly basis every day in baseball.
Steve Molesky, go ahead.
Mike, has the rebuild reached the point where you are starting to identify core players you want to keep 3, 4, 5 years down the road? You're more likely to keep than trade, for instance. Is John Means one, or are there some others?
Yeah, I think that we are, Steve. We've talked about the last couple of years that this is a big reason why we avail all these players of playing time, and why we did so in 2019. Rather than bring people in that might block some of our interesting players, we wanted to let a John Means pitch, or let an Austin Hayes or Cedric Mullins get their at bats and figure it out. And in some cases, it works, and in some cases it doesn't. But this is part of what you do when you turn towards your young talent internally. Getting successful in the major leagues often takes a lot of time. Not everyone is a superstar from the moment they're drafted all the way up through the minors, and as soon as they play as rookies. And these are some of the benefits of the process that we're undergoing, that we have players on our watch that have blossomed and improved. And first of all, I hope they keep it up, and I hope they stay healthy and remain successful. But second of all, yeah, we've got these players under contract for many seasons, and we plan internally, and we are absolutely starting to see players that we project to be playoff caliber starters for the Orioles, and we want to keep those guys going, and we want to build around them and add to them.
We have time for a couple more questions. First, we'll go to Stan Charles.
Hey, Mike, I understand the need for privacy, but could you tell us not what the issue is that's taking Chris Holt from the team, but is it something that you foresee being lengthy, or do you think he'll be back in the near future?
Yeah, thanks. As we've put out, it's a personal matter. I would refrain from going any further than that. He's still actively involved with pitching planning here at the major league level and the minor league level on a remote basis right now. But it's just something where it was very important, and we all agreed that he attend to it.
Thank you.
Melanie Newman, go ahead.
Mike, obviously it's a business at the end of the day, but Rio Ruiz was someone you have a deep history with. Does that make a move like that any more difficult for you, just having that personal connection? And then moving on from that, bringing in a guy like Stevie Wilkerson, you have Pat Valaika. Do you see baseball starting to trend in this huge value of the guy who can play anywhere on the field versus a specialty?
Yeah, I think clearly there has proven to be a lot of cachet for players that are real true utility players. And by that, I mean able to help at short, second, center field, among other positions. In our situation in particular, I think one of the reasons that we made that move was we are anticipating a stretch here where we're going to need a lot of pitching. We don't have a lot of off days. Stevie brings a lot of versatility and backup. He backs you up at short. He backs you up at center. He's an everyday caliber defensive second baseman. That's kind of his primary position by trade. He can go play third. He can play the corner outfield, play first base if needed. Really every position besides catcher. And we're anticipating maybe having to carry an extra pitcher or two during this stretch. And so with him and Pat Valaika on the team, that's a lot of versatility packed into 2 roster spots. It's going to be very helpful for our roster construction during this stretch. And, ultimately we decided that this was the appropriate and the best roster construction for us for the time being and going forward. And I think Brandon touched on it extensively, but Rio Ruiz has been a great part of this team and this clubhouse and a really good contributor for the last 2+ seasons, really, since we claimed him at the end of 2018, has provided a very steady presence, especially at third base defensively. And he's done a lot to stabilize this club and help us. And who knows, he may be back. We'll have to see how the designation process completes and what happens. And we certainly would, welcome him back with open arms should he remain in our organization. But this is baseball. It's a transient business. Things change day to day. You develop working relationships with players and people, very close, a lot of affection for them, a lot of connections with them, and everyone sometimes goes their separate ways and crosses paths again. It's a hard thing to describe, but he's certainly someone that, speaking for Brandon too, we wish the best for him, whether it's with us or other teams. And he's a terrific kid and person and hard worker. And so I know that he'll be back in the big leagues and get other opportunities. But sometimes it's time to go to AAA and get your footing mentally and mechanically. And we think that that's the right move for him and us right now.